So now today we are going to study the interrogative sentences, how we are going to convert interrogative sentences from active voice to passive voice. All right. So this will be the last type. After that, we will solve the exercises. So the auxiliary verbs. So if auxiliary verbs are present like do, does, and did in an interrogative sentence with the main verb in the active voice, then it changes into is, are, was, and were in the passive voice. So basically what we are saying is that do, does, and did changes into is, are, was, and were in the passive voice because these are auxiliary verbs. We will see it with the help of examples. The auxiliary verb is placed before the subject. So over here, do you eat cakes regularly? So here we are using do the auxiliary verb and eat is the main verb. So do you eat cakes regularly? So this sentence is in the simple present, right? So what are we doing? The do verb changes into are. So are cakes eaten? The third form of the verb eat is eaten, right? Because the second form is ate and the third form is eaten. So are cakes eaten? Then the subject that was present in the active voice, we have made it the object in the passive voice, and we have used the preposition by before it, and then regularly comes at the end as it is, right? So what it becomes are cakes eaten by you regularly. So you can see that auxiliary verb to has changed into are. If there was only one cake we were talking about, then it would have been is, right? Because this verb comes according to the subject that we are taking. If the subject is singular, then the verb is also singular. If the subject is plural, then the verb is also plural in nature. Now see another sentence with did, which is again an auxiliary verb. Did the agency book the ticket on time? So this sentence is in simple past, right? Because we are talking about did. Did the agency book the ticket on time? So over here, since we are talking about one ticket, that is why we are using was. So the auxiliary verb did has converted into was. As I have already told you in the instruction that the did verb changes into is, are, was, and were. And since it is in the past tense, so we are using was. And because we are talking about a single ticket, that is why we are using was. If there were many tickets, then we would have used were. All right. Then we have used the third form of the verb book, that is booked over here. The second form is also booked, and the third form of the verb book is also booked. So was the ticket booked by the agency? The agency that was the subject in the active voice has become the object in the passive voice. By, as the preposition has been placed before the object as we do it, and in the end we have placed on time as it is. So was the ticket booked by the agency on time? So whenever we are using auxiliary verbs do, does, and did, we always change the auxiliary verbs do, does, did into is, are, was, and were in the passive voice. So we have learned this over here. Okay. Now the auxiliary verb has, have, or had. Now we will talk about the auxiliary verbs has, have, or had. Earlier we were doing do, did, and does. So over here, when we have auxiliary verbs has, have, or had in the active voice, they change into has, have, had accordingly, and plus been plus past participle form of the verb in the passive voice. For example, have you watched any movies recently? So here in place of do, does, and did, we have, has, or had. So over here we have as the auxiliary verb. Have you watched any movies recently? So we know that we are talking about a sentence that is in present perfect, right? because have watched is the form of present perfect tense. If you remember the concept of the tenses, you will recognize it, right? So what we are going to do, we are going to use have as it is. In the when we have has, have, or had as the auxiliary verb, it does not changes its form in the passive voice. Do, does, did change its form into is, are, was, and were, but has, have, and had do not change their form. They remain as they are. So have any movies. Any movies was the object in the active voice. So now it has become the subject in the passive voice. Have any movies been watched? So you remember the chart that I showed you earlier, that in case of present perfect tenses, the correct form of the be verb will be been, right? So have been watched. Watched is the third form of the verb watch. So have any movies been watched? Then we are placing the subject in the active voice you as the object in the passive voice, and we have placed the preposition by before it, and then in the end recently is coming as it is. So have any movies been watched by you recently? So now we have seen two cases. If auxiliary verbs do, does, or did are present, then we are changing them into is, are, was, and were. But if the auxiliary verbs has, have, or had are present in the active voice, then we are keeping them as it is. And what we are going to do, we will add plus been plus past participle. That is the third form of the verb. All right. Now we will see another case where we are talking about continuous tenses. So if the question is having a continuous tense in it, then the verb form in the passive voice is, am, are, was, were. So again, we are changing it into is, am, are, was, and were plus being. So again, since in the passive voice verb has ing form, so over here also the be verb takes the ing form and becomes being. Plus we have past participle, that is the third form of the verb. I have told you that the third form of the verb always remains constant. It does not change. So again, we have the third form of the verb. So what will be the structure? Is he making a coffee for the guest? So this is something that is present continuous. Make right, because is present and making is present. So is he making coffee for the guest? So now we are going to use is as it is, as we are showing it over here. Then what we are using? We are using being because it is the ing form of the verb. So is coffee being? Then made is the third form of the verb make. First form is made, the second form is made, and the third form is also made. So is coffee being made for the guests? And then in the end, we are placing the preposition by and the object of the sentence in the passive voice, that is him. Why? Because he was the subject in the active voice. So we have made it the object in the passive voice and we have placed by before it. So for this sentence, is he making coffee for the guest? Is coffee being made for the guest by him will be the correct way. All right. Now, I think there is one more case left where there are modals present. All right. Do you know modals? Modals are also helping verbs. All right. And they are never used alone. We always use modals with some principal verb, or you can say the main verb. All right. They are never used alone and they give some additional information about the action that the main verb does. All right. For example, they tell us about the certainty of an event, right? The possibility of an action, the willingness to do an action. So they tell us all these details. All right. And the example of modals can be may, can, could, will, would. All these words are called as modals. All right. They are the helping verbs that are never used alone, but they always come along with some principal or main verb. Right. So Now, what they are saying is that modal present in the active voice never changes in passive voice. So the modal always remains the same. I'm seeing some of the students getting distracted. What is happening? Aritra is constantly talking to someone else. Isha also gets out of frame. What is happening? Focus. So if a sentence is starting with a modal like, may I borrow your pen? So may present over here is a modal. And we know that modal never changes in the passive voice. So it is going to remain as it is. So may, then your pen, that is the object in the active voice, naturally becomes your subject in the passive voice. So it will be may your pen. And in cases of modals, the be verb comes as it is. We don't change the be verb in modals also. So may your pen be borrowed. Now borrowed is the third form of the verb borrow, because the first form is borrow, the second form is also borrowed, and the third form is so the second and the third form of the verb borrow is borrowed only. So may your pen be borrowed, then we put the preposition by, and the subject I in the active voice becomes our object in the passive voice, and it gets converted into me. So may your pen be borrowed by me. Now see another example. Can is also a modal. So over here we are saying, can you postpone the meeting by an hour? So over here, you is the subject, right? The meeting is the object. Postpone is the main verb. Can is the modal verb. All right, by an hour. So now, when we convert it into passive, the modal remains the same. So you can see again that the modal does not change. Now the meeting, that was the object, has been changed into the subject in the passive voice. So can the meeting, again be is coming as it is. Now again we have changed postpone into its third form, that is postponed. So can the meeting be postponed by an hour? And then in the end we are placing you, that is the object in the passive voice, because it was the subject in the active voice, and we have placed the preposition by before it. So can the meeting be postponed by an hour by you? So this is how we are going to convert it into passive voice. Now, if you find a sentence starting with who, these sentences are also very common. Who threw the ball? So over here, we are basically talking about a tense that is in the simple past, that who threw the ball. So over here, immediately we are going to use by whom. Since we are talking about passive voice, so naturally, who was the subject over here? So it must have become it should have become the object in the passive voice, right? So in the end, it should have come, but we have placed it in the beginning, but we have used the passive form only, because you can see whom is the object form of who, and by has been placed before it, right? So over here, you can see by whom is actually the passive form of the word who, right? So, but we have placed it at the beginning. So by whom was the ball thrown? Thrown is the third form of the verb throw. Throw is the first form, threw is the second form of the verb, and thrown is the third form. So by whom was the ball thrown? All right. Was is the correct form of the be verb. Why? Because this sentence was in simple past. So we have used was as the correct form of the be verb. By whom was the ball thrown? So I have covered all the cases regarding your interrogative sentences. So now we are going to solve an exercise where we have to change the sentences from passive voice into active voice. Till now, we were converting all the sentences from active voice into passive, but now we are going to convert from passive voice into active voice. All right. So who is going to answer? Raise your hands quickly so that we can start with the exercise. All right. Two students. All right, let's start with Angel. Yes, Angel. Angel, you are not audible. Please check. Is your mic working properly? If the mic of your device is not working properly, then use a headphone or an earphone. I will come back to you. Get the issue addressed, then I will come back to you. Isha, you can attempt.
Mr. Ghosh taught us history.
No. First of all, Isha, tell me the tense that is being used over here. Then only you will be able to convert it correctly. Can you tell me the tense present in this sentence? See, don't look at taught over here. If you will look at taught over here, you are going to get confused. Because if you remember, we always use the third form of the verb in passive voice. Remember? So you will find all the sentences, they will have the third form of the verb, praised, destroyed. But that does not mean that the sentence is in past tense only. Because this is the nature of passive sentences, that they take the third form of the verb, and the third form of the verb always looks like past tense, right? Because it always takes the past tense, but it does not mean that the sentence is actually in the past tense. We need to identify the tense of that sentence with the be verb. See, are present over here. So this are present over here is giving us a hint that the sentence is not in the past tense, but it is in the present tense. All right. So in order to find the correct tense of the sentence, always focus on the be verb instead of the main verb, because the main verb always gets converted into its third form in the passive voice. So if you will follow the main verb, then you will always go astray. All right. Now attempt. First of all, tell me the tense and then try to convert it into active voice.
Simple present.
Yes, it is simple present. Now try to convert it.
Mr. Ghosh, Mr. Ghosh teaches us history.
Absolutely fine. Mr. Ghosh teaches us history. Right. So because it is in the simple present tense, so we will write Mr. Ghosh, and since it is in the simple present, so we will use teaches, and then we is present over here, so we is going to come over here in the objects position. Mr. Ghosh teaches us, and then in the end we are going to write history. So this is basically the reverse process that we are doing now, right? So now you will find there is no by over there. There is no third form of the verb. So now you can easily see that we are doing the process just in reverse. All right. Yes, Mayank.
Sir, the answer will be the teacher praised her.
She was praised by the teacher. Yes, the teacher praised her. Why? Because this sentence was in simple past. And how we came to know it was in simple past? Because only was given for the be verb, right? If there was being, then we could have known that some continuous tense was being used. If been had been present in the sentence, then we would have known that some perfect tense is being used. But since it was only was present, therefore we come to know that the sentence is in simple past. And when it is in simple past, so obviously first of all we are going to make the teacher as the subject in the active voice, because we reverse the process, right? So the teacher praised. Praised is the simple past tense. So the teacher praised her. and her is the object form of the subject she. So the teacher praised her. It will become she was praised by the teacher. So after converting, if you have some confusion that whether you have converted it correctly or not, then you can read the sentence in the active voice and try to relate it to the sentence that is given in the passive voice, because you are habitual of converting active voice sentences into passive, right? So it is more easier for you to compare it. So after you have converted it into active, you see that whether the sentence that was given to you, is it a correct conversion into the passive form or not. So if you can find that the original sentence is correctly present in the passive form, it would mean that you have converted the sentence into active form correctly, right? So you can check for yourself. All right, Pranjal. Yes.
Good morning, teacher.
Good morning.
Sir, sir, it is in simple past tense.
Yes, because
And,
was is
and the
present
answer
over
is
here. So we only have was as the correct form of the be verb. So from here we are getting the idea that it is in the simple past. Now convert it, Pranjal.
the landslide
Yes.
destroyed the city.
Yes. So since the sentence is in simple past, so we need the sentence to be in simple past. So the landslide destroyed the city. We have just reversed the positions of the subject and the object, and we get the sentence in active voice with the simple past tense. Okay. Yes, Navya now.
Sir, the sentence is in present perfect tense
Yes, it is in present perfect, right?
and it will be someone has eaten my muffin.
Yes, because since the object is missing over here, but we need some subject in the active voice, right? So we can use someone over here because it is not clear who has eaten. So we are going to use someone. So someone has eaten my muffin. My muffin now is going into the object's position. Absolutely correct. So how we identified that the sentence was in present perfect form? Because we see that been is present. This is giving us an idea that we are talking about the perfect tense. And because has is given with been, this is actually giving us the idea that the sentence is in present perfect. If the instead of has, had was present, then it would have been in past perfect, right? Then we could have judged that the sentence is in past perfect. So always the be verb will give us the idea what is the tense of the sentence. All right. Now we move on to the next set of sentences. So now you are getting an interrogative sentence. By whom were you taught swimming? All right, Rishik.
Sir, it will be
Yes.
who taught you swimming?
Yes. Who taught you swimming? And why it is in the simple past? Because we can see that only you were is present over here. So were and taught. So were is the correct form of the be verb that is present over here. And this is giving us the idea that the sentence is in simple past. So now we have to write a question with simple past tense, right? So, and whom is present, which is giving the idea that the subject will be who. So we are going to use who as the subject. Who taught you swimming? All right. Now who is going to answer the next one? Swastika. All right. Brajendra, I will come to you.
Spectators thronged the stadium.
Yes, spectators throng the stadium, you are saying, right?
Yes.
Yes, it is correct. So first of all, we are making spectators as the subject in the active voice because they were present as object in the passive voice. So spectators thronged. So this sentence is basically is in simple past, right? That is why we are using thronged, and then we have put the object, right? Because the stadium is present as the subject in the passive voice, so we have reversed their positions. Spectators throng the stadium. Now over here also you can see that the correct form of the be verb over here was. So from here we are getting the idea that the sentence was in simple past, right? So spectators throng the stadium. All right. Brajendra. Yes. Brajendra, unmute yourself. Are you not getting?
Good morning, teachers. Good morning,
morning.
teachers.
Good morning. Yes.
Sir, the answer will be they found him guilty of kidnapping.
Yes. So again, you will find that one thing is missing, that who found. Yes, we just know that he was found guilty of kidnapping, but by whom is not given to us. But for converting it into active voice, we need something, right? So we can use an appropriate subject for it. So over here, we can use they for it. All right. So we can use they found him guilty of kidnapping. So how we come to know the tense, Brajendra? All right, Brajendra has muted. All right. They found him guilty of kidnapping. So since over here was present, right? So this was telling us that this sentence was in simple past. And since by them was missing over here, we don't know the subject. So what we did, we used they as the subject in the active voice. So they found him guilty of kidnapping. So we wrote this sentence in simple past only. All right. Yes, Somesh now.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Sir, by a famous architect, this house was designed.
Why are you using by, Somesh? By is used in the passive voice. Now we are converting it into active voice. When it was a question, then only we use by. Apart from that, you will never see by in the active voice, right? Because we use by, and that by was also in the passive, right? When we converted it into active voice, can you find by over here? You will never find a by present in the active voice. You can see. You will never find a by. Right? So
Yes,
now
sir.
tell me.
A famous architect designed this house.
Yes, now it is correct. So since we know that was is present as the correct form of the be verb, so from here we are getting the idea that the sentence is in simple past. So how we are going to write? First of all, we are going to make a famous architect as the subject, right? So a famous architect. Then we are going to use designed. That is the simple past of the verb design. All right. So a famous architect designed. Then we are going to put the object. Design this house. Since this house was the subject in the passive voice, so it has become the object in the active voice. So we have reversed their positions. All right. I think we have some more sentences left. Yes. So these are the last 4 set of sentences now. Okay, I think Angel can try this one. She was not able to do it the first time. Yes, Angel. Was the work finished by her? Angel, you are again not audible. I don't know. There is some problem with your device. Check. Yes, Yanshi, you can try. Yes, Yanshi, you are not getting the option to unmute. I have given you the permission. All right, then I am going to ask Om. You wait. Yes, Om. Yes. Answer now, sir.
The answer is, did she finish the work?
Why finish, Swastika? When we are using did, then we don't use the past tense because did is already something that is in the past tense. All right. Actually, you made a lot of these mistakes in your essays, in your grammar. I have checked your copies. So don't make these types of mistakes. When you are using did, then you don't need the past tense. All right. So we will use did she finish her work? We won't use finished. All right. Why we won't use finished? Because this did present over here is already showing us that it is in the past tense. So why again we will use finished? We won't use it again. So, all right, I have also used finished. Okay, I'm cutting it. So did she finish her work? So now you see that was present. So we got the idea that do, did, or done must have been present as the auxiliary verb, because I have told you this rule earlier, right, today, that if do, did, or done is present, then we convert it into is, are, was, and were, right? So that is why we have converted this did into was in the passive voice. So when we come back into the active voice, so we are going to use did, because was something that was in the past tense. So we have used did. And then we have used the object that was there in the passive voice as the subject in the active voice, because did was already there. So we have used only finish over here. And then we have placed her work. So her work or the work. All right. So now who is going to answer me? Aryan. Yes, Aryan has not answered till now.
She has not stolen my book.
All right, good. So from has and been, we got the idea that the sentence is in present perfect tense, right? So from here, we are getting the idea about the tense of the sentence. And since her is the object in the passive voice, so naturally, we are going to make she as the subject in the active voice. So she has not stolen. So we are going to basically write the sentence in the present perfect form. She has not stolen, then my book will come. Because my book was the subject in the passive voice, so it has become the object in the active voice. She has not stolen my book. All right. Who is this? Kavya. All right. Yes, Kavya first.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Yes, Kavya.
The hunter killed the deer.
Very good. It was an easy sentence also because this sentence was basically in simple past, and simple past is easy. So the hunter, wait, Mayank got disconnected, I think. The hunter killed the deer. So how we got the idea that it was in simple past? By this was present. So was the correct form of the be verb that was present over here. So we knew that the sentence is in simple past. So again, we changed the position of the hunter from the object's place in the passive voice to the subject place in active voice. Then we placed killed as it was in simple past. And then the deer that was the subject in the passive voice has been made the object in the active voice. Swastika, you have answered. Now you are not getting the opportunity. Now Palak.
Everyone will encourage us.
Yes, we will be encouraged. So will be encouraged is showing that the tense of the sentence is in simple future, right? So we are going to write the sentence in simple future tense. And everyone was the object in the passive voice. So naturally, it is going to become the subject in the active voice. So everyone will encourage. Will encourage is basically the simple present form, right? So everyone will encourage us. And why us? Because we was present as the subject in the passive voice. So naturally, we are going to place we at the object's position, and the object form of we is us. So everyone will encourage us. All right. So now I think we have come to the completion of the exercise. Yes. So the exercise has been completed now. So this also ends our chapter on active and passive voice. All right.